Hi, Steve Adubato. Welcome to all the folks watching us on public broadcasting and on other outlets. We are honored to be joined by Brian Stelter, who is the anchor of Reliable Sources. I check out every Sunday on CNN, 11 to 12 noon, 11 a.m. Also, CNN chief media correspondent and the author of this book. It's called Hoax, Donald Trump, Fox News, and the Dangerous Distortion of Truth. Brian, great to have you with us.
Thank you. Thanks.
We're taping on the 17th of November. Unlike CNN, where you can catch things going on every day, this will be seen a little bit after. So let's put things in perspective. A lot has changed in the, let's call it, the right-wing conservative media landscape since you wrote this book. Has it gotten us any closer to truth, or is it worse than ever before?
I think we're seeing a fracturing of right-wing media, and it's not a good thing for the country, because there is a steady supply of mis and disinformation. When I say misinformation, that could be a mistake, it could be an accident, but disinformation is intentional. And there's been a lot of that in and around this election season, this never-ending election season. Some on Fox, but some also on channels that are even more right-wing than Fox, like Newsmax and One America News. So for the first time in the 24-year history of Fox News, it has competition from the right. This is a new development, and I think it's probably a problem for the Murdochs.
One of the things about your book that I particularly appreciated, and I did some work at Fox back in the day, if you will, so I know some of the players there, but you talk specifically about Sean Hannity and Laura Ingraham and some of the others, who you have argued over the years. And we're not going backwards. We're trying to put this in perspective. At PBS, we try to make sense of public policy, public opinion, all of these issues. But Brian Stelter has argued that there's this loop that has gone on between Trump and some of the opinion hosts that is really unhealthy. What do you mean by that, Brian?
It's unhealthy because they misinform Trump, and then Trump misinforms the rest of the country. And yes, the Trump years are coming to an end, but the damage is quantifiable. We can measure some of this. There have been arguments, debates about immigration and other policy matters.
About COVID?
And most importantly about COVID, because in the early days of the pandemic, Fox stars downplayed the disease. And the president watches all of this stuff, gets it in his head, and it's really Fox leading the president. I think it's oftentimes Fox setting the agenda, not Trump. And that has had troubling consequences. But let me also say, Fox is a complicated place. There are great journalists there. There's a lot of people trying to make the content better. It's a complicated place. But the highest rated shows on the channel are the ones that have been misinforming the president. And in many ways, I think that's what ruined the Trump years. I would argue, and I want to see if readers of Hoax agree with me, that Fox did Trump a disservice. And Fox is one of the reasons why Trump lost the election.
How so?
I think because by misinforming him and by keeping him in a safe space, an echo chamber where he's only hearing what he wants to hear and what he already agrees with, he didn't have a sense of what the country was really going through and what Americans were really thinking. On Fox and Friends, the Fox News morning show, they like to go to diners and interview Trump voters. But, they set these diners up so that you barely hear from any dissenters. You barely hear from any Democrats. That's not reality. I mean, at least in most parts of the country, I'm sure I could find a couple diners where there's only Trump supporters. But you know what I mean? The Fox messaging, I think, gave Trump a false impression of what the country really was feeling. And perhaps that did a disservice to him.
So, Brian, looking forward into 2021, this will be seen, as I said, in the first quarter of 2021 as well. Does it matter whether Donald Trump, post-presidency, creates a media empire or whatever he wants to call it, a TV station, or hooks up with one of the others? Does it really matter that much what he does? Or is it his Twitter feed that so many of us in the media follow and report?
Yeah, I think it does matter that he's going to launch a media platform. We will see exactly what he does, but Twitter will be the foundation of whatever he does, because he is able to command an audience on his Twitter feed. For example, there are times where he will tweet, "Tune into Maria Bartiromo's show," and then her show on Fox News will have a big rating spike. So he does have a power, even post-presidency, to move his base and to give his base directions on what to watch and where and when. That's influence. Of course, it doesn't mean most of the country is going to tune in, but his base is still going to pay attention via his Twitter feed.
But beyond all the insider baseball stuff, Brian, big issues for democracy in this sense. If people believe certain things and they go to media and information sources that reinforce what they believe as opposed to challenging them, what does that mean in terms of people being open to other points of view, not only in the citizenry, in terms of citizens, but what about in Washington with elected officials who do the same thing?
Right. There's so many lawmakers that are just chasing clicks and retweets right now. They're just chasing attention from Fox News, trying to get on Fox, trying to impress their core constituents, and not actually doing the business of governing. That is a terrible trend that we've seen exacerbated in recent years. And I fear that will continue. I don't see easy short-term solutions to that problem. I can tell you, though, there's a lot of journalists at newsrooms like CNN and Fox that want to actually cover the policy issues, that want to cover the meaty issues of the day, and not these culture war, phony baloney stories. But, you know, at the end of the day, it's about leadership, and lawmakers and presidents and White Houses have to provide leadership and give us policy news to cover.
You know, on Reliable Sources, you have great journalists on from all over the country every Sunday, by the way, from 11 to 12. I just want to plug that again. I learned so much from the show. But here's the question. What advice do you have for those of us? I don't mean just in the public broadcasting family, but those of us who are frankly are trying to do the right thing. What is the right thing in 2021 and 2022 moving forward if we want to be part of the solution and not just part of this echo chamber?
Yeah, I think the war on truth is real, but truth is winning. Most Americans see through the lies and the fog machines that are out there. It's mostly coming from the right, but there's noise and nonsense on the left as well. Most Americans see through it. Most Americans just want to know what is true. It is so confusing when you're on Facebook and Twitter, seeing all these stories, not knowing what's real and what's made up. And that's why these newsrooms are actually more important than ever before. I think it's actually a great time to be a journalist because people really need help knowing what is real and what is not in the world around them. I think that's increasingly the role journalists are playing as a verification layer to tell you, you know, that story is authentic, that one's made up, that one's hyper partisan, and you really shouldn't buy too much into it. They're making a mountain out of a molehill over there. You know, we are in some ways navigators, trusted navigators through this complicated information world, and that's a vital role to play.
So interesting. You said that's what the citizens of our country need. More complicated question. Do they want those of us in the media? We always say, you're laughing already because you know where I'm going.
I do.
In public broadcasting, we try to focus on issues, social determinants of health having to do with race and disproportionate impact of COVID on people who are black and brown, police brutality issues, a whole range of economic issues, strife. Do you think people, not to mention infrastructure, climate change, et cetera, do you think most people, enough Americans are going, you know what, I want that?
I see in ratings and in traffic and in page views and in all these measurement forms that there is a big audience for trusted, what we would think of as old-fashioned, mainline institutional news coverage, you know, the kind provided by PBS and NBC and CNN. There is still a big audience for that programming. At the same time, though, partisan voices on the extremes are a lot louder. And it can sometimes seem like Sean Hannity is more important and more influential than David Muir. Actually, David Muir on ABC has a much bigger audience than Sean Hannity, but Hannity is louder, it's much more emotional, it's much more in your face. And so I do think it's a worthwhile reminder that actually it's the straightforward news that reaches a bigger audience. What we do about those extreme voices, how do we let people know that loud does not mean better or best, loud does not mean most popular? That continues to be an issue, I think, going forward.
Final question. Joe Biden, president moving forward. Again, this will be seen in 2021 as well. Advice for him and his administration as it relates to dealing with the media and the media dealing with President Biden.
Right. There are some norms that the Trump administration destroyed that Biden will hopefully bring back. A sense of honesty and expectation of transparency. I know Trump appeared to be accessible by giving lots of interviews and talking to Fox and calling into Fox and Friends, but much of what he was saying was untrue. American people deserve access and honesty from public officials. So that would be number one. I think number two, let's have more transparency from this White House. Visitor logs, for example, which the Trump administration did not release. There are some easy, simple things, they should be simple, that the Biden administration can do to both be and act transparent and show that they have nothing to hide, to show that they want to restore a sense of decency and normalcy. And then, of course, I think what's most important is the press has got to hold his feet to the fire. What we've saw in the last 4 years of the Trump administration is a more adversarial, aggressive news media. I think that's a good thing for the country. I think it's long overdue. It's more like a British model where we are not trying to cozy up to power. We are trying to hold power to account. That has to continue in the Biden years and with whoever comes after him as well.
And by the way, we are not the enemy of the people. This is the book. It's called Hoax. And I found it a great read. Check it out. And Brian Stelter, check him out on reliable sources every Sunday from 11 a.m. to 12 noon, and also on CNN on a regular basis as a chief media correspondent there. Brian, you honor us by your presence here on Public Broadcast.
Oh, thank you. Thanks.
Have a great day. I'm Steve Adubato. We'll be right back.
One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation. Funding has been provided by the New Jersey Education Association, Valley Bank, the Russell Berry Foundation, PSC&G, the Fidelco Group, Kessler Foundation, St. Joseph's Health, Fedway Associates, Inc., and by NJ Best. Promotional support provided by NorthJersey.com and Local IQ, part of the USA Today network, and by New Jersey Globe.
What is your child's dream for the future? Doctor? Teacher? Architect? Whatever they aspire to be, a college education may realize those dreams. And NJ Best can help. It's the college savings plan specifically designed for New Jersey families. Start saving today with as little as $25, because now is the time to invest in their future. To learn about NJ Best 529 College Savings Plan, its investment objectives, risks, and costs, read the Investor Handbook available at njbest.com.